again. Our next panel is on commercial and heavy vehicle safety on the way to Vision Zero, and this is a main stage first. This topic is so important that we have 6 people coming up to tackle it. I am very pleased to welcome them. This panel is going to be moderated by Jessica Truong of the Towards Zero Foundation. I'd like to invite Jessica and all 5 of her panelists to the main stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Truong, and I'm here from the Towards Zero Foundation. So the Towards Zero Foundation is a UK-based charity working towards a world free from road fatalities and serious injuries. And as mentioned, this is the first time, I guess, the IAA has actually featured road safety as an important topic. And we're very excited to be here to share this information with you. So you may not think very much about road safety as a topic when you're thinking about transport and logistics, but it is an issue that concerns every single one of us. Every single one of us uses the road network in some way every single day, whether you are a driver, a passenger, a cyclist, or at the very least a pedestrian, you'll be interacting with the road network in some way. And you may not be aware, it is one of the biggest killer of people in the global health sense. Every year, 1.35 million people are killed and many millions more injured globally on our roads. And the majority of those are in our low middle income regions. And that's why when we're talking about transport and logistics and working on our road network, we need to ensure that our roads and our vehicles are as safe as possible. So today I'm joined by 5 panelists that represent road safety experts in our field, as well as in research and also in our big company logistics, as well as research and our automotive industry. So today in our 45-minute session, we just want to bring to light what road safety means, how does that concern the transport and logistic industry, and what role companies can play to help make the world a safer and better place. So first, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Klaus Tingvall. Klaus is very well known within the road safety industry. He's known as the father of Vision Zero, and he was also the former director of the Swedish Transport Administration. So I'd like to welcome Klaus.
Thank you very much, Jess. Thank you for inviting me here. My message, together with so many others, is that traffic safety is now one of the sort of core ingredients of sustainability, at the same level as health, climate, and equity. And that means a lot. And by the way, this is something that's been sort of expressed by the 2030 Agenda very clearly and by the UN General Assembly. But it means also now that sort of the private sector, all organizations are expected to use fully their instruments to improve traffic safety, which means that in particular large corporations within their supply chains or their whole value chains are expected to not only apply best possible methods to reduce the death toll that you were talking about, but also report on it, to report on their safety footprint, how many are killed and seriously injured within their whole value chain, and then start telling the world, their owners, the financial sector, what they're going to do about it. There is a new framework that is now going to be released very soon by the FIA that deals with the way you are tackling road safety, and in particular, of course, the choice of vehicles. And that's where global NCAP becomes so important, and your NCAP in measuring also for heavy goods vehicles and buses and the like, the safety performance of them, so that large corporations can utilize the best possible vehicles. So this is a big day for us all in that sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Klaus. And with the number of people being killed and injured every year, what has the UN General Assembly done about that?
Well, we're talking about halving the road toll within this decade, which is I mean, of course, it's an enormous challenge, and that's why we need the whole community. And especially, of course, in low and middle income countries. But also that's where the large corporations have very much of their supply chains. And that is why it's so much hope in sort of connecting that kind of target that's set in the community with all private enterprises are doing with their road transports.
Fantastic. So that's what we're all working towards. Between 2021 and 2030, it's been declared the next decade of action for road safety. And what we're trying to do as a community in road safety to ensure that what we want to do is by 2030 be able to halve the number of people being killed or seriously injured on our roads. And that's why what Klaus was sort of talking about, sustainability and what companies can do, every single one of us can make a big contribution to achieving that target by 2030. So next I'd like to invite Mr. Walter Nisler, who's the Chief of Vehicle Regulations from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, to say a few words about what role do vehicle safety regulations play in helping make fleet a lot safer.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to intervene here. Let me recall, and it cannot be told often enough, the global road safety situation. We have more than 1.35 million people killed in road crashes every year, and some 20 to 30 million heavy injured people. Here in Europe, we are in an area of the best performing region when it comes to road safety. Other areas, especially in low and middle income countries, suffer extremely due to their low road safety performance. This does not only cost huge numbers of lives, but also has a remarkable economic impact of a level of 2 to 3% of GDP of the countries concerned. Of course, vehicle safety can only be one solution to better this situation. Therefore, the Global Plan of Action for the decade on road safety, 2021 to 2030, rolls out a safe system approach at the global level, so that human errors are compensated by vehicle technology or by infrastructure or other elements in the road safety system. But vehicle, especially fleet safety, plays an important role. And let me just quote one paragraph in the chapter on actions to ensure vehicle safety of this global plan of action, that states that governments should provide, through legislation, a minimum set of safety standards for vehicles, considering all categories of vehicles, including passenger cars, vans, trucks, buses, and powered 2- and 3-wheelers. So this is a call for governments to get active. At the United Nations, we are running the so-called World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, where we have 3 United Nations vehicle agreements with, in total, more than 190 individual legal instruments that cover the safety of vehicle parts and system. Let's look from the front underrun protection device to the coupling device at the rear, but also covering last technologies, like blind spot information systems for detecting of bicycles, advanced emergency braking systems, moving off information systems, and means of rear visibility or rear detection. These are the latest systems that allow and support the driver to have a better view and be warned if some obstacles, passengers, bicycle riders are in close vicinity of the heavy-duty vehicle. These legal instruments are here ready to use off the shelf. And they are not only for governments. They can also be used by fleet operators when purchasing, when renewing the fleet. So in a tender procedure, and I hope this is usually done, references to these UN regulations could, or let me better say, should be used for defining the safety requirements. And the recommendation from global NCAP on fleet safety cover an exhaustive list of these UN regulations.
That's fantastic, Walter. So really what we want, we see a lot of heavy vehicle companies amongst us at the IAA, a lot of fleet managers and company. What we would encourage them to do then is to make sure if you are supplying trucks and heavy vehicles for businesses, to make sure they actually do meet vehicle safety regulations to protect their customers.
Yes, so in principle is just use this recommended UN regulations when purchasing fleets. And let me say once more that the fleet operators should act as ambassadors for vehicle safety. The fleet they are purchasing today will stay in their country, will stay in the region, and there will be, after the first operator, usually 2, 3, 4, 5 operators following. And they will benefit of this new technologies.
Thanks, Walter. Let's move to Dr. Thomas Dickman, who is representing ZF here today. Welcome, Thomas. And, you know, once again, you know, we've got lots of big companies here showcasing the latest innovations, but there are lots of existing technologies available already that can make a big difference to heavy vehicle safety, commercial van safety. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. As you said, there is a long track history of us as company as pioneering some of the safety systems. And the oldest one are really maybe ABS as example, and probably, I think, globally regulated in most of the large countries and states. But afterwards, of course, we have introduced electronic stability control programs, which also contribute to safety. We have introduced AEBS, probably also tire pressure monitoring is belonging in that section. And as you rightfully said, we didn't stop there. There is more to come, like reversing cameras for trailers. I want to mention this. We may have a discussion on that, but not in the focus. So we have a lot on the shelf right now. Not everything is globally implemented. And there is a special element that we're discussing today. When we're discussing about the fleet side of it, the technologies of, let me say, simply telematics, of connecting data to the fleet center is also leveraging today's technology. So if the fleet operator knows how many ESC events or rollover events have been prevented, this will have an influence to the driver and how he is acting. He will get this feedback. So making what the control systems do, making that transparent at the fleet center is leveraging the safety systems one more time.
Thank you, Thomas. And these technologies, they are readily available on commercial and heavy vehicles?
Clear, yes. The things I just listed, they are basically available, basically globally available, and not everything in every continent already regulated. Some is voluntary use or not being used so far.
And that's fantastic. So companies that are looking to make safer fleet purchases should be looking out for these advanced safety technologies that are readily available and can make a big difference to safety.
That's exactly the idea that we're discussing. And yeah, I think we already mentioned the examples. We are convinced this brings us a huge step forward.
Fantastic, that's great, Dr. Thomas. And I'd like to introduce now Mr. Matthew Avery, who's the Chief Research Strategy Officer at Fashion Research, a very well-known research institute. Matthew, we've just talked about these technologies and how much it can contribute to the UN decade goal of a 50% reduction in road trauma and how much difference it can make to safety. But you, with the research background, can you shed a little bit more light on exactly how these technologies can save lives?
Well, I think firstly, let's just think about some of the background that we've got, because I'm from a UK organisation, but we're also members of an organisation called Euro NCAP, and hopefully lots of people will understand that. They'll recognise it for passenger cars. So what does Euro NCAP do? Well, it's a consumer organisation that produces independent ratings for vehicle safety. It goes way beyond regulation. Regulation obviously is very, very important, but it really drives best practice because some manufacturers go above and beyond what's required for regulation. And so it drives a market for safety, and it's been hugely important. So since 1997, we've got something like a 60 to 70% reduction in vehicle occupant fatalities in vehicles because of vehicle manufacturers going way beyond regulation, going for 5-star vehicles. And those ratings have evolved over the past 25 years now. We are now in our 25th year. And those ratings have evolved to encompass not only passive safety, which is protection in a crash, but also active safety, collision avoidance technologies. And in 2020, we moved on to other vehicles. We started looking at vans. So there's now a Euro NCAP rating for passenger vans, for regular goods vans. And we've been really impressed how vehicle manufacturers are now making many of the systems that have been standard on passenger cars. They're now making those systems available on the vans, and it's hugely important. Things like autonomous emergency braking, lane support systems, driver monitoring systems, speed limiter systems, all of those things that are standard on every single 5-star vehicle. And now we're moving on to heavy trucks. So we hope that by 2024, there'll be a rating for trucks as well. So that's heavy trucks. So it has to be different because we're not talking to a consumer this time. We're not talking to somebody who's looking to protect themselves or their family. This is a B2B conversation. This is to talk about fleets. And this is where the fleets play an extremely important role. Because the important thing for the fleets, the fleet operators, and the hauliers is information. And what Euro NCAP does is it provides that independent rated information to say this one is better than that one. And it enables fleet operators and manufacturers and hauliers to make an informed choice for safety.
That is fantastic. So it's going to make it a lot easier for fleet companies that are looking to purchase heavy vehicles make a very easy decision. You don't have to consider what regulation it meets. You can just look at the rating from Euro NCAP.
And that's it. And of course, what we do is we create competition. We create a market for safety. So manufacturers are able to offer products, but also see what other products are in the market. And we recognise that trucks are used in bespoke operations. So we've got city trucks where they might be smaller and they need to be more accessible. You've got long-haul trucks working up to 44 tonnes. And therefore, the safety systems are probably different because those vehicles have different crashes. The crashes you have on a motorway, on a highway, are different to those we have in the city. So they can be designed to protect both sorts of crashes, but also they can be designed very bespokely because if a vehicle only stays in the city, does it need that protection for, high-speed AEB because it will never be on a highway? Yeah. So they can be designed specifically. And the key part is the information is available for the fleet buyer to select that individual vehicle. So we hope that these ratings that we hope to be published by 2024 will be a game changer for fleet operators, vehicle manufacturers, hauliers, and city authorities to be able to identify this is a safe choice.
That is great. I think a lot of people will be eagerly awaiting for the publishing of these results because, like you said, it's going to be a game changer. It's going to make it a lot easier for fleet managers that are looking to purchase heavy vehicles to make that informed decision. So thanks for sharing that with us, Matthew. So we've heard a bit about why vehicle safety matters and how you can actually select safer fleets, but let's hear from the fleet perspective, let's hear from a company that has actually made these safer vehicle purchasing decisions. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Gabriel Cardos, who's the Global Director of Road Safety from Johnson & Johnson and also the Chairman of the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety. Welcome, Gabriel.
Thank you, Jessica.
Can you share with us a little bit about what Johnson & Johnson has done around fleet safety and how you, as the Chairman of NETS, has seen fleets adopt safer purchasing practices?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question. I think in both NETS, the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety, and J&J, we've done a lot over the years related to road safety. I'll start with Johnson & Johnson because our fleet is pretty much commercial vehicles, no heavy goods vehicles. I'd like to highlight a few things that we've been successful with. The first one is predictive analytics. It's, we have over 30,000 drivers around the world, and about 75% of our fleet is already on some sort of predictive analytics. What does that mean? It's trying to identify those drivers that are most likely to be involved in a crash. And notice I say crash and not accidents, so we refer to it as crashes. So we try to identify high-risk, medium-risk drivers, and once we've identified them, we put them through various e-learning trainings, hopefully getting them out of the high and medium low risk into the low risk category. So that's predictive analytics is one thing that's been very successful in reducing our global crash and injury rates at Johnson & Johnson. The second thing I think is very important is having a comprehensive model of road safety. So a lot of companies look just at their in-scope fleet drivers, the company-owned, the company-leased, the car allowance, gray fleet vehicles. As of 2 years ago, our company has really tried to expand that model. I call it the onion model. Yes, we're looking at our core fleet drivers, but now we're looking at how can we influence the greater community? How can we provide education and training to all Johnson & Johnson employees around the world that come to work somehow every day using public transport or their own vehicles? How can we influence all of those transportation suppliers, people that are providing taxi, bus, shuttle bus services? They're taking our employees from one place to another. How can we influence them by following our strict standards on mobile phone use, driver fatigue, training their drivers? So making sure that when our drivers call a taxi, for example, that company has been vetted and is also following the same requirements we require of our drivers. And then there's the next layer, which is the community. How can we impact road safety in the community? And we do a lot of corporate social responsibility work. I can think of 2 projects that I've been involved in. A Safe Schools project in South Africa, where every day children take their lives into their own hands, crossing very busy streets to and from school. So we looked at calming measures. We worked with partners like IRAP to see what kind of implementations we can do to make those roads safer around schools. And another example is Helmets for Kids in Vietnam, where we donated over 70,000 helmets to children. Many children are coming to school on the back of the motorcycle or the scooter with their parents with no helmets. So I think this comprehensive model is really important, Jessica. And then finally, it's really important for private sector companies to procure safe vehicles. And this is where your group comes in towards Zero Foundation Global NCAP by putting out guidance for companies to really include in their policies. Make sure you have the safest vehicles possible for your employees. Go for 5-star, but not lower than 4-star crash test rated vehicles. Have the dual airbags, have the ABS in the cars and on the motorcycles as well. So I think all of these combined will help make fleets safe for NETS. We do benchmarking every year. So all of these Fortune 500 and other smaller companies every year are benchmarking road safety metrics, and also we're benchmarking program elements that we're doing, and we're learning from each other best practices. So I think there's a lot the private sector companies are doing, but it depends on the maturity level your company is at. Probably there's a lot more we can continue to do as we step into the decade of action for road safety.
That's great that Johnson & Johnson is so committed to road safety and has that 5-star procurement policy. It really does make a big difference, not just to your employees' health and safety, but also the greater good of the public as well, because you're out there interacting with other traffic, with other road users as well. I mean, a question that often comes to mind when people talk about buying safer cars is around cost. Is it going to be more expensive to buy a car with certain technologies or a safer car? And maybe Klaus, you can maybe share your thoughts on it. Is a safer car necessarily a more expensive car?
No, that's the sort of the good news is that, of course, it costs money to develop cars with better safety, but that differentiation you see on the market between cars with sort of all the technologies and those without doesn't really show up in the way they are priced. So, and we can see now with the latest Euro NCAP results, a fairly cheap electric car performing as a 5-star car, while some of the really premium cars doesn't reach that level. So, and so it's more about time. It's more about sort of when you have that generation of cars that you are selling, are they sort of designed 3 years ago or just 1 year ago? So that is more the issue. But that is all the time, and mind you, it is driven by the NCAPs. It's driven, of course, by regulation that sort of picks up what is not really, well, what is unaccepted. But that development is very much driven by the NCAPs around the world. And now being applied, as we're talking about, into heavy goods vehicles. I mean, there's one of the best news of this week is NCAPs and global NCAP and Euro NCAP stepping into heavy goods vehicles and commercial vehicles and business-to-business relations. I mean, we can foresee the same rapid, enormously effective development of vehicles we've seen. And I don't think economy is going to be the problem. It's more time, it's more what you can foresee, it's more the kind of technologies that make sense. But it's very much up to the NCAPs, to the global and Euro NCAP, to make sure the right technologies are there. But it's not going to be about economy. It's going to be about the global movement. It's going to be about public procurement and reporting on sustainability that will drive the process.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So in vehicle safety, we always talk about this magic formula of a, regulatory push and demand pull. So on one hand, we want to encourage governments to implement the right vehicle safety regulations so that vehicles entering the market in that country actually meet at least minimum regulations. And then on the other hand, we also want to have the push from the community and from our consumers to actually encourage manufacturers to produce safer cars. And that's achieved via new car assessment programs where we purchase vehicles, we crash test it, and we give it a safety rating between 0 and 5. And Matthew, you sort of touched on Euro NCAP, which covers all the European countries. How have you seen the evolution of vehicle safety over the years? Have we seen, as a result of having NCAPs in place, safety actually increasing over the years?
Absolutely. As I said, there's that 70% reduction in adult occupant fatalities in Europe. And we're seeing a huge reduction in pedestrian collisions with AEB. We're seeing a reduction in car-to-car crashes with vehicles fitted with AEB systems, something like 40–50%. So these technologies are working. And bear in mind, we don't invent the technologies. I need my colleague to my left to actually produce the innovations that go into the vehicles. We just encourage the vehicle manufacturers to adopt them. And we'll do the same with commercial vehicles. Talking to the vehicle manufacturers, a lot of them have got this technology, but we're here to enable the engineers. It's not that they don't need this, it's that decisions are made in companies whether they'll put certain products on certain vehicles. And so we're here to sort of encourage them to do that because the technology's there. And also we're driving innovation. And a very important thing that we're about to do within Euro NCAP is launch our roadmap for 2030. Now, you might think, why do we need a roadmap to go between now and 2030? It's really, really important because it takes time to engineer vehicles. So if we want vehicles in 2025 to have these innovative safety systems on that lift the barrier even more, we need to tell the vehicle manufacturers this is what we're trying to do. And it has to be based on good science. So we're looking at the accident rates, we're looking at how people get killed and seriously injured and say, we've done a good job, but there's still more to do. We need to address this collision. And we know that there's technology from my colleagues to the left other suppliers are available, and put that innovation onto the vehicles. And that drives a safer system. And then we put the information out to the consumer, and the consumer can make the decision. Just like we want it to be for the fleet managers, for the heavy goods vehicles, that they can make the safer decision, make a safer choice.
Yeah, that's great. And often when we talk about safety, it often comes to the high-income country areas first before we slowly see it trickle down into the low-middle-income countries. So I want to ask Thomas, like the technologies that we're talking about, like automatic emergency braking, electronic stability control, they're not exactly new innovations, but they can save many, many lives. Are they readily available in low-middle-income countries as well?
Basically, yes. Basically, the answer is yes. However, they are not mandatory required by regulation in all these countries. And this is usually, how to say, not promoting a broad usage. And that's what we are also talking about here. Partly it's regulation, partly it's also to giving motivation by giving, I don't know, levers to the fleets, maybe in terms of competition to see where are we, but maybe also in terms of promoting things in a way. You ask for the cost, and where is the cost? And in commercial vehicles, we usually talk about total cost of ownership. That means in the beginning, something might cost money, but it is usually done when it pays off after time, after a certain time. And I'm quite sure that lots of our technologies pay off over time, and this is why they are used. But it's not very easy to also make transparent when something is paying off, and this is also something that we can discuss. That might be part of the metric in a kind of point system in the NCAP scenario. We may discuss this, but this can promote also the usage. So yes, we basically offer the technologies that you mentioned on a global base, but they are not used 200% in each of the markets.
Yeah. And that's a really important point I think you touched on, Thomas, there, is that a lot of countries are currently not regulating for these life-saving technologies that we're talking about. So I wanted to turn to Walter there and ask, like, the technologies that we're talking about, electronic stability control, autonomous emergency braking, are there UN regulations in place that countries can readily adopt?
Yes. Clearly answer, yes, we have all these technologies covered in our regulatory framework. Governments can easily adopt it. They are ready to use off the shelf for the governments. It's just their political decision to mandate them. However, we see in discussions at the national level in these countries that some players of the industry side, of the manufacturer side, heavily intervene to have this regulated. Maybe there is a cost reason behind, or what is the other of cost? It's the benefit reason behind.
Yep. Right. So we want to obviously see an increase in these technologies amongst our global fleet, and one of the best ways to do that is to encourage fleet managers to only purchase vehicles that meet certain safety regulations, meet a certain NCAP 5-star requirement, and also have the uptake of these technologies that we're talking about. So Gabriel, then, what is the key way we can incentivize fleet managers to do that? I mean, Johnson & Johnson already has that requirement. How can we encourage other fleets to do something similar?
I think it's just communicating. It's communicating that there is a document in place to support companies that might not be at the same maturity level as us or other large companies. Communicating at conferences. I think there's a lot we can do to promote that. The policies that companies have in place. Make sure your policies are addressing all of the risks, and make sure they're addressing all of the wonderful safety features that we've just heard about today. Make sure the cars have the ABS. Make sure they have the forward collision warning, lane departure. Get as many safety features into your policies as possible, because in the end, it pays off, right? It's not about the money, it's about the people. At the end of the day, every company wants their employees to go home safely, arrive home safely to the people they love. So that's, for me, what it's all about. And I think companies can do a lot in this respect if they include these safety features in their policies.
Fantastic. Well, we're sort of coming towards the end of our panel, but I just want to give each of our panelists an opportunity. 30 seconds. I'm going to start with you, Klaus, so you can start thinking. But a 30-second reflection and message that we want our audience to take away around what responsibility do fleet managers, companies, how can they contribute to the UN decade goal of a 50% reduction? What do you think is the key thing that they can do?
Okay, thanks. I think we've heard today that you can, for the first time, really measure the safety of commercial vehicles. And I think no fleet manager will be against taking up that possibility and making sure that you are investing in the best possible, if it makes sense, in the best possible vehicle fleet. Simply because you have an obligation towards your employees, the occupational health and safety. You have it towards your owners out there, the financial sector, and you have it towards the wider community and the urge for making this planet more sustainable. And I think that business understands this even better sometimes than the political system. But we've heard today, global NCAP and other NCAPing organizations will provide us with that kind of measurement. That's really good news. Thank you.
Thanks, Klaus. Walter?
Yeah, very brief. Let's say fleet operators should act as ambassadors for safer vehicles by renewing their fleet, replacing old existing vehicles with vehicles that have the latest safety technology. These vehicles will stay in the region. They will contribute heavily to increase of road safety.
Great. Thank you, Walter. Matthew?
Well, commercial vehicles are a key part of a good-performing economic society. We need commercial vehicles. They make 1.5% of our fleet. They represent 15% of our killed and seriously injured. So we need to do something about that. And it has to be a team effort. We can produce the information, we can rate the vehicles, we can encourage the vehicle manufacturers to fit this technology on. We need the fleet buyers and the operators to choose a safer vehicle, because there are benefits not only to them, but the whole society as a whole, and the reputation of their companies that they represent. So it's a win-win situation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matthew. Thomas?
Yeah, what shall I tell? Look out for ABS, ESC, and all the devices we talk. Where it's already in use, these people can confirm it's contributing to safety. And the story never stops. More is to come. And even where all these systems are in operation, we talk already about the GSR, which introduces even more sensors and benefits like turn assist, blind spot, information moving off and reversing, and so on. And it's still all that it will still continue.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. And Gabriel?
I think from a private sector employer perspective, provide the safest vehicles possible for your employees. Training. Make sure that, look at predictive analytics, try to prevent a crash before it happens. And I think the last thing is metrics, data. You can't manage what you can't measure. So any companies that do not have a fleet safety program yet in place but want to embark on it, get measures, get baseline data, find out what types of crashes you're having, find out how many injuries you're having. Once you have the baseline data, you have everything you need to start to build a good fleet safety program in your company.
Thank you, Gabriel. I think what we've heard today is road trauma is a big issue. It is one of the biggest health threats that we all face, but it's not necessarily one that we think about on a daily basis. But what we've heard today is there are solutions available. You know, the UN has set us this ambitious target of a 50% reduction by 2030, and it is achievable. We've heard solutions, we've got technologies via vehicle safety that can make a big difference in commercial and heavy vehicle safety. So whether you're attending IAA as a fleet manager, you can make a difference by making sure that the vehicles that you purchase for your employees are as safe as possible. If you're here as a manufacturer, you can make these technologies available as standard so that people can have better access to it. If you're here as an individual, you can also make a difference by making sure the next vehicle you purchase have all the safety technologies and also meet a 5-star NCAP requirement. I guess the short take of that is we all have a role to play and we can all help contribute to that UN decade goal. And I hope that this has been an enlightening session that has put road safety on the agenda for you and that we can all work together to meet that 50% reduction by 2030. So I'd like you to join me in thanking our panellists and also thank you very much for your attention today.